It's Susan from Seaside Stitches. Just checking in. I like to be able to post a video every Tuesday. It's not always possible, and last week, the week before, were quite mad because I managed to put 6 up on my new channel. So I'm Susan at Seaside Stitches, and thank you very much for tuning in. I had quite a few things I wanted to talk about, but I'm very aware of the problems we've had with lighting in this room. It's been difficult to sew sometimes. I've had to find different places, different positions to sit. It's Lancashire, it's November, and it's getting really quite dim and dull, and we don't get sun on this side of the house. It goes over the roof. In the summer it goes a little bit lower, but never actually shines into this room. But the light levels have been awful because of the rain and the dismal weather. Anyway, so I'm just nipping in for a quick 10-minute introduction, or even a bit less than that, and I think this will then be kind of a mismatch of mishmash of all sorts of me in different clothes saying different things about different topics. But basically I want to talk about my scraps. They're bubbling out of the little baskets, and I need to sort the scraps, and I want to talk about the other Harper Cardigan that I made. I made a blue one, and now I don't know if that was on here now. I've made one in this colour, and this is my second pocket, and that's all I have to do to finish it off. So I'm going to talk about that at some point in this or the next video. And I'm just really enjoying my journey. I'd lost a bit of there's a few people losing their their mojos at the moment. I think it's the weather. It's just dull, and I don't know, it takes a lot to get your energy going. But I've really wanted to do a particular project for quite a few weeks, and I saw Sarah Pascoe on a program, something like QI or something like that, and she was wearing a really lovely white blouse with flounces and lace and puff sleeves, and it really inspired me. And I've been looking to think about what I could do that I could manage and I could have a pattern for. So I've managed to get some white seersucker. It's not white, it's off-white, not quite cream, but I'm looking into that, and I have got the why does it go out of your mind just as you're going to talk about it? Anyway, it's the flouncy thing, the Phoebe Flounce from I can't remember its name, and I've been looking at it all morning. Anyway, the instructions look really nice, really understandable. I feel really quite connected to the person who runs that company. Yeah, so I want to do that, and I'd got another kind of velour, I don't know what colour you'd call the green. It's a deep green, and I made it a few years ago. I never got the fit right. I've never really worn it. When I did it's a stretch velvet, and when I did the neckline, I overstitched it. I did the most perfect hem on it. It was just absolutely, I could not have done it. I don't know how I did it so miraculously good in terms of the line. It wasn't all wonky or anything. The zip was another matter, and I've since taken the zip out, and because it's stretch I don't need it, so I've just sewn up it just was bulky, and it was like some rolled up thing that had been stitched round, and I really wasn't happy about it. Anyway, lately I've taken the zip out and I've undone that stitching, and it's got long sleeves, and I've made the McCall, can't remember its number, but I'll fill you in with all the details of that. I took some film of me cutting it out a couple of weeks ago. I did a thing where I did some batch cutting, and I really like that idea because it just gets me ready for, I can leave them all together in their little piles or in a box with each of their separate things and notions and everything ready, and the thread, and then just go to them and start. And that's how I did what I did with this other Harper Cardi, and I've altered that I've made it short sleeved rather than long sleeved. There's a story why I did that. And I did the cardigan from McCall's that I'd done. I showed people it, episode number 6, whatever it was called, and I've done it without the sleeves so that I can wear it over the over that dress, and it kind of zhuzhes it up a bit in a it casuals it down really, because it being velvet, it's a bit like a medieval maiden, and it's quite, you can kind of think of velvet sometimes as being quite formal, but I wanted to brighten it up, and I'd got this lovely fabric from Abakhan, which is just a sneak preview of that, because my scrap boxes are mad full. But this is the mat, and that's the thread I used. I always keep that and stick it in my book. It's a mad fabric with pineapples on, and I don't know the name of this fabric. I don't know what it's called. I'm thinking it might be akin to double gauze, but it's got a slight, not really much give, but it's a jersey. It's knitted, and it's got a wrinkly back on it. But it came up nice. It's sewn really well, so I made the cardigan but without the sleeves, so that I can have the sleeves of the velour dress through, and it just kind of brightens it up. So I'm looking forward to showing you that. I've put a timer on so that I don't run over these few minutes, because I've got an appointment very shortly. And what else? Oh, so I was talking about the Phoebe Flounce top. I'm going to use as a basis for adding some puff sleeves, long sleeves, maybe some more frills somewhere, I don't know. I may not get around to doing it. I've looked at the pieces, I've looked at a big sleeve from another pattern, and I'm quite excited. I felt really quite creative last night. The only stumbling block for me is that it's a PDF, and I was having awful trouble with the printer. I've managed to get the actual pattern done. It's that laborious thing of sticking it and cutting it and sticking it and then having it ready to lay out. And I just really want to get on with it. So that's making me think, is it worth the extra to get it done by a printing company, a copy shop? So I'm considering that, because along with that pattern, I've also, I've got the Lulu cardigan. Oh, can't think where they're from either. I'll put a little thing down. Yes, Andrea from the Beyond the Pink Door, she was doing the Lulu cardigan, and it looks really quite good. You just put it's different anyway, and I'll explain that later beyond this introduction. And I wanted to cut that out, but it won't print. It's printed the pattern now after lots of messing about, but it won't print the full instructions. Last time I didn't print the instructions for the Sinclair pattern, the Harper cardigan, and it was a nuisance because it's laid out as it's laid out as a book. It's laid out as a book, and so you've got one page you look down and the second one, and I'd moved up and missed something off that second page. And so I wanted to actually have the printed instructions. I know it's a big deal about paper and printing and ink and conserving energy, and it's really quite a dilemma for me whether to do it. The time has gone off. I am sorry. I will stop that. Thanks ever so much for watching this part. I hope you'll stay with me. This dress is the McCall that I talk about a lot, and I will explain it. But this, I finally finished it. It came with me from our previous address, where I'd made it about a year before that. So I started it in 2014 and I finished it in 2020. That's probably not a record for me actually, but thank you for listening to this part, and I look forward to seeing you later. Thank you. I've got some enthusiasm for making a frilly blouse of some kind. I'm not quite sure how that will work, but this is going to really crackle, excuse me, but this is just the size of one of the sleeves I'm thinking of using. And this I'm borrowing from the Simplicity 8875, which I've had a little go at making just a kind of a toile out of for something else. But this is the fabric. It looks bright white, but it's kind of just slightly off white, and I suppose it's like a seersucker. I've ironed it and it's not come out too badly, so I'm going to have a go. It made me think, how could I make that? What would I like? How can I go about constructing something similar? I haven't seen her again in it. I don't know which programme she was on, so I've no idea really. It's only a bit of a memory for me, but I did think of exploring the Phoebe Flounce that Michelle at Sewing Bunny had done a sew along, and or maybe not the sew along, but she gave a pattern review, and I really liked the way that worked. And she was saying about the instructions being really quite user friendly, and so I've also got scraps here to talk about. So my idea was to talk about scraps because they're taking over the world in my room. I did a second Harper cardigan, which I don't need to go into at this point. I'm still in the process of putting on the second pocket. I've made it slightly different to the other one that I made, a blue one. That's in episode 4 and 5 that I talk about that, of Seaside Stitches, my brand channel that my son helped me set up, because I'd just been having it in my own name with bracketed Seaside Stitches, but then on my own other channel I can then talk a little bit more about, or a bit less about sewing, and more maybe political with a small p, or climate driven ideas, or more generalised than specific to sewing. I'm really loving the sewing. It's just keeping me going. It's amazing. Yeah, I've just got back into sewing after several years not bothering, and made an attempt at a dress which I've described in episode 3, I think, of my channel. This should be episode 7. I'm very new to this, so it's an experiment every time I do it. And I just hope you bear with me. Thank you very much for watching so far anyway. And one of the things, because I've made these Harpers, I'm gathering more and more scraps, and I've made these scrap boxes. Debbie Shaw gave me the idea for these, and a thread catcher, and quite a number of these I've got, but now they're overflowing, so I'm just going to mention that. Don't need to go into scraps in an extensive way, but it's another way of recycling. I just hadn't realised that you didn't need to throw anything. Virtually nothing needs to be thrown away, which pleases me a lot. Just like all this kind of repurposing things that I've had no use for, or I've not wanted to get rid of, or I don't like waste. I don't like waste. And so I'll show you what I do with some of my waste. So the scraps, I don't know what you can see there, but the scraps, when I've actually decided whether they could be used for anything else or not, end up like this. Some of them, if they're less than a 2-inch square, then quite often they end up like this. I actually like this because it makes you remember what you've made and what you've sewn. But these are really good for if you're doing door stops or draft excluders. Some people, I believe, use them for making dog beds to donate to their local pet rescue centres. So that's a really good use of them. And I just need to sort out, so I have different categories. This is kind of the bigger category that I have to go through from my other box. I do have something that, if you'll just excuse, had a go a while back at looking at, I've never quilted before, never made patchwork or quilting, so there was quite a poignant time with COVID, from the first encounter that we had with it, and the way our government really let us down, let our staff down. They didn't have the PPE in place. I'm in the UK, in Lancashire. They didn't have the PPE in place, the personal protective equipment, and there were lots of scandalous goings on really about who they were giving the contracts to. But meanwhile, we had people on the front line who were nursing people and they didn't have the proper equipment, and we had quite a lot of staff deaths, just a desperate amount of staff death. And previously I was a nurse quite a long time ago. I trained as a nurse, and I worked in infection control at one point in my career, and I'm very aware of how important it is to keep safe and keep the barrier between you and your patient, and between each patient to patient. So it was really upsetting for me, and I'm in a Facebook group that we share a lot of similar ideas of how distressing it was, and we were trying to think of how can we create a memorial to these people, because it was starting off like 21 and 38, and then it got into 125, and then it was 300 and something, and it was, what on earth can we do to memorialise these wonderful people who've worked so hard? There were postal workers, there were frontline nursing staff, doctors, consultants, doctors at all grades, nurses at all grades, care staff, paramedics, ambulance drivers, porters. It is an absolute travesty. It's a crying shame, and we were trying to think of how to do this. I'd set up I've got some plastic trellis out in the garden, and I'd started putting a ribbon on for each person lost. They're not lost, are they? They've kind of, well, I feel like they've been sacrificed. So this is what I mean about, if I have another channel, I can go on a bit more at depth. Maybe you don't agree with this. Maybe all you want to know about is sewing. So I'm just going off at a tangent because I'm talking about how on earth can we memorialise these people, and someone suggested maybe we jointly work on a quilt like people did for Grenfell. And I've never made a quilt, so I didn't know how I could contribute to that, but I did start to look into it, and so I looked. What I found was Teresa Down Under, who is amazing. She you don't see her face, it's just music and there's messages, and she just compiles. You just put one piece after another. It shows you exactly how to do it. But this is what I call this is what is described as a crumb quilt. So if you've done that before, you'll be very aware of what that is. But it is just really random, and it's really difficult to be random because you want to make it match. And but these were offcuts from, I'm in a drumming group. We're in for change, so we drum for positive change. You could call us a protest group, but we drum for good causes, and to draw attention to things that are not being given the attention they need. And our colours are purple, yellow and red. So I'd made some drum skirts or flags for our drums, for a few of our drums, and then I'd also made a green teddy bear from this cotton for my grandson, and I'd made a red teddy bear for our other grandson. And so these were some of the offcuts. I've got lots more that I've got to work with, and also the teddy bears got dungarees, so they've got some of the material from that. So that was just my beginning of one evening. I started to put things together. I'm not saying this is for a memorial. This was just me getting started into the idea of quilting. I'm just working with a 1/4-inch seam that I'd never done before. That sounded really, woo, but I could do it. And then just these are kind of offcuts from when I've done the baskets, these scrap bags. So I've got lots more to do on that, but that's just a way of using scraps up. So from this, you can just make it grow and grow, and then you cut out something from it. So that can become a bag. When that gets bigger, that can become a reusable bag, shopping bag, tote bag, whatever you'd want to call it. And just following on from my nautical theme, I thought I would do some themed ones and some non-themed ones. So they are just examples of me using up my scraps. And so when I sort the scraps, just as another aside, earlier I was talking about putting together some way of doing this blouse, this white blouse, that I want to be a bit flouncy and a bit frilly and a bit lacy or not. I'm not quite sure yet. We'll see what happens. But I'd sent for the Pattern Union Phoebe Flounce dress, Phoebe Flounce top pattern, and I've been really, I've printed out the instructions. I had problems with my printer, and I printed out the instructions, and I was reading them last night, and I really feel inspired to get on with it. For this one, I've managed to get the printer right now. I've done it to scale, and that one's got a pattern just to start getting ready. Andrea from Beyond the Pink Door has made a Lulu cardigan. I think she's made a couple, and I watched one of her sew-alongs with that a few weeks ago, and I thought I would really like to try that, but it's quite a short cardigan and quite a fitted one, and I thought that would be quite good with something like this dress. And so I tried to print out the instructions last night and it wouldn't have it, so I have to go and have a word with that afterwards. But I have now managed to print out the pattern from it, so I can download the instructions and use that on my iPad. But I don't feel as secure using that. That's just that aside. And yes, so the other one is Pattern Scout, the Lulu cardigan. So I'm going to have a go at that. I'm not saying I'm going to do it this week, this month, before Christmas, after Christmas, I've no idea. I definitely want to have a start on this blouse and see how I get on with that. And the Harper cardigan I've made is a rust colour, and it's only with short sleeves, and I thought if I've got a big kind of a balloon sleeve, then that would be quite nice coming out from under there for that blouse. So we will see what happens. But just going back to my scraps, just so that I sort them into smaller little bits, little scraps, real scraps, really teeny tiny scraps. These have got a bit mixed up now, so they all need to be gone through. And it's just another job, but it's a job that, like, when the light is too bad for me to actually sew, I can mess about with my scraps, sort them into, because they are more or less in the smaller category, so that all I need to do is trim them a bit and use them for packing of something. And then the others are, and I've also separated, see, I've just been flinging them, not very good practice, but I've also kept separate things, like, oh, that's some Velcro that I've taken off some cushion covers. These are all bits of interfacing, and that could come in for something. Just a little buttonhole reinforcement, I don't know. One of the things that I discovered for doing shoulder seams, stabilising shoulder seams, is using strips of interfacing. Someone, Lauren Guthrie, I think she's called, was showing how she stabilises them in using like interfacing that's as a tape. And so she unrolls some, puts it on, cuts it, and then irons it on. And I thought, well, I've got scraps of that I can use for that. Why would I buy a roll of that when I've got odd bits of interfacing? So there you go. I'm not saying these bits are big enough for that, but that's some fusible fleece kind of thing. So they're just to be gone through for maybe different ways, different things that I'm going to use for packing stuff. And there's a few things to do with threads online that I'm going to look into, but I did do one thing where you embroidered. It doesn't look very nice really at the moment, but I'm going to show it you. Okay. What I really enjoyed about this was I practiced doing straight lines, wiggly lines, all sorts of lines. I don't know if you can see it really much. This was just an old piece of curtain, and all this is, you gather your threads out of your threads, yay! So you gather some of your threads, and basically you just sandwich them onto a piece of something, some fabric, and you pull them out as random as you like, and then you get some foil, some chiffon or some organza or whatever you want. That's see-through, and this one is a beautiful kind of a bluey chiffon kind of thing. And then you sandwich it, you put the, perhaps can't see it, ooh, look at that, So you cover that with your chiffon or whatever it is you're using, and then you just start sewing over it, making whatever pattern you want to do, and then eventually it turns into some sort of a pattern, or not pattern, or mess of pottage, or whatever you want to call it. But I saw it was on a craft site, can't just think of the name. When I do, I'll put it in the description box or just on a little card at the top, where they were doing this and then making them into book covers, so that you got quite a nice crafty kind of book cover or something. And I plan to just back this and put some binding around it, and it's just, I don't know, it's just a nothingness really that turns into a something. But what I've enjoyed is practicing doing straight lines. I've tried on my other sewing machine, I tried each of the different stitch patterns in different sizes, different widths, different colours, just to get me used to practicing. Just really, I really enjoy it. I find it quite soothing. It doesn't really matter what it turns out like. I found it quite soothing and quite interesting. Yeah, so I just thought I'd share that with you, because we've got enough stuff going in landfill, and a lot of this is kind of coming from plastic into its polyesters and its jerseys and its knitted man-made fibres, and they're going to be difficult to break down. So if we can reuse them, even if they're going into doorstops or draft excluders, if you're using them for a draft excluder, then you're saving your money, you're saving some energy, aren't you? And also you're saving your bits and pieces. You know, it's not costing you anything for any padding or filling. I'm going to finish for now. Well, I've got another project that someone has asked me to collaborate with them on. Can't explain anything about that yet, but have to document it for this collaboration. So when that is documented for that and that has taken place, I can show you the documentation that I did about the documentation. If anybody gives a damn, really, it doesn't matter. So as you can hear, I'm quite excited now to get on and do something with this, and we will see what this turns into. So thank you for listening. My name is Susan. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Write me a comment. Tell me what you're working on. Tell me what you do with your scraps. I'd really like to know. I'm really new to this, so I'm still enthusing. Some days are dark and dull and dreary, and I'm really glad to be able to have this opportunity to share with you. So thank you very much. Hope to see you again. Please do subscribe. Thank you. Bye.